I likely speak for all of us when I say that I remember exactly where I was on October 7th when I received the news. I remember exactly when I heard, how I heard, where I heard, and I very distinctly remember my emotions processing all that was transpiring around us on that day that shattered our world and turned our lives upside down. And I also distinctly remember my reaction in the days following October 7th, when we looked around at the world in the West and realized just how few friends we actually have. People that perhaps we thought were friends were not our friends, and how even in our darkest moments, the world can turn on us. And again, speaking for myself, but I'd imagine for others here as well, I can't say I was entirely astonished intellectually. I had no illusions of the Jewish people having robust friends and allies throughout the world. I was acutely aware that antisemitism continues to remain a societal problem in the 21st century. But experientially, going through that in our darkest moment was really frightful and painful in those moments, in those days, those dark days immediately following October 7th. But even as we've had a feeling, many of us, that we have no friends, that there's no one out there who's willing to take our side, who's willing to be an ally, who sees the world through a clear moral prism, and is willing to stand with the Jewish people, there are rare exceptions. And those exceptions deserve to be celebrated, to be appreciated, and we have the great privilege of hosting one of them with us this evening. I think because we so often find ourselves alone, and because we have such a long history of persecution, when we do find the rare friend, there's a natural Jewish skepticism. Are you really our friend? What are your motives? What's in it for you? And tonight we have an opportunity both to express appreciation for friends that we have and to explore that Jewish skepticism, that natural Jewish skepticism that occurs when we discover the rare ally. Tonight we have the privilege of hearing from Luke Moon. Luke is the executive director of the Philos Project, a pro-Israel Christian organization, which is partnering with Yeshiva University and running a joint master's degree for Christian students at YU's Bernard Revel Graduate School of Jewish Studies, where I myself studied, where my wife studied, where I met my wife, as a matter of fact. For the last decade, Luke has focused his attention on raising awareness about persecuted Christians in the Middle East and encouraging Christian support for Israel and the Jewish people. He is also an ordained Southern Baptist minister, and I will say this is not Luke's first time at Congregation Bnai Yeshurun. His first time here at Congregation Bnai Yeshurun was on April 1st, when we had an openly pro-Hamas protest outside of our shul, and we rallied the Jewish community and our allies, all those who stand by us, with moral conviction and clarity, to say that it was not something that we would not stand for. You were protesting a Zaka event, if you recall, a humanitarian organization that cares for human remains, and Luke was one of the people who stood with us. Just for that, they ask you to acknowledge and recognize Luke being everyone. Luke, thank you for being here with us again.
It's my honor.
Rabbi Mischel is the director of education at Israel 365, where he works to build bridges between the Jewish and Christian communities in support of Israel. He is the editor of HaMizrahi magazine and the author of the recently released book, The War Against the Bible, Ishmael, Esav, and Israel at the End of Times. I know many of you know Rabbi Mischel as Eli. I was speaking to someone today, one of our congregants, who said, I'm so excited to hear Rabbi Mischel. I remember his bris. My reaction was, I'm sure he was wonderful that day, but he's going to be even better tonight. He's going to be even better tonight. And it was a great privilege to have Rabbi Mischel here. I will say that before October 7th, Rabbi Mischel and I were engaged in very serious conversations about ways we can bridge the gap between Jewish communities in the diaspora and Jewish communities in Israel. A challenge that, and a task that we've only come to appreciate more, the importance of it we've come to appreciate more in this post-October 7th world. I can tell you that Rabbi Mischel was someone who was thinking about this before October 7th, before the horrific new reality required us to be thinking about it. And it's a great privilege for us to be hearing from Rabbi Mischel. Rabbi Dr. J.J. Schacter is University Professor of Jewish History and Jewish Thought and Senior Scholar at the Center for the Jewish Future at Yeshiva University. From 2000 to 2005, he served as Dean of the Rabbi Joseph P. Soloveitchik Institute in Boston, and from 1981 to 2000, he served as Rabbi at the Jewish Center in Manhattan. I think Rabbi Schacter is someone that we are all familiar with. I'll just tell you one story that will, I think, go in Rabbi Schacter's Gadol biography. Most of us know Rabbi Schacter for all the things that he does know. He's a remarkable scholar. If he had to make a short list of people who embody the Torah Umada ethic of Yeshiva University. Rabbi Schacter would be one of them. But recently I discovered something that Rabbi Schacter does not know. As we were preparing for this event, and as I was sending lots of emails and having lots of communications about this event, I kept making a repeated error, and Luke, I apologize for this. I kept saying Rabbi Mischel will be in dialogue with Keith Moon tonight. For those of you who may not know, Keith Moon was the drummer for The Who. Luke, please don't blow anything up on stage tonight. I hope you will not. So I kept making this mistake. At a certain point, our executive director, Alicia, said to me, Rabbi, I know you grew up listening to classic rock, but it is Luke Moon, not Keith Moon, that will be presenting tonight. And I laughed at myself, and I shared this with Rabbi Schacter Shlita, to which his response was, who is Keith Moon? I said, here's the man who represents Torah Umada, philosophy, Milton, Shakespeare, all of it. But when it came to The Who, his response was, who is that? So, kol hakavod, Rabbi Schacter. Again, I've been impressed with your vast knowledge many times, but this gap in knowledge, perhaps I was even more impressed with. And it's a great privilege for us to hear from you again tonight. Without further ado, I hand over to our three presenters. Thank you for being here tonight. Without further ado, Rabbi Schacter.
That's right.
Thank you, Rabbi Schreier. Thank you very much for hosting us and for giving us the opportunity to have this very important conversation within the confines of your extraordinarily wonderful and great congregation that is very much blessed to have you at the helm of the leadership. In the relatively short time that you've been in our community, you have incredibly distinguished yourself as an outstanding rabbi in so many areas. Even though you know who the Who is, you're still a massive Talmud Chacham, a wonderful human being, an extraordinary rabbi, an outstanding communal leader, and we are honored. We are honored to be in the space that you grace with such extraordinary distinction as a rabbi of this shul. I want to thank Alicia Stein very much, who's the executive director of Bnai Yeshurun, for all of the background work and arrangements and setting up. And on behalf of all of us, we're in your debt, and we thank you very much. I want to welcome all of you, and in particular, I want to welcome Kelly, who was sitting right here. Please rise, Kelly. Kelly is a colleague of Reverend Moon, and has come to be with us this evening. Kelly, thank you so much. We are honored by your presence. We are, as you heard, at a very significant time in the unfolding of the current reality of the Jewish people, both in Israel and in the United States. And we're very much related one to the other. And I'm honored, really honored, to have a chance to engage in the conversation with these two extraordinary leaders who sit right next to me. Rabbi Mischel, who has a very distinguished career as a leader of the Orthodox community in the United States, in Staten Island, New Jersey, and now for the last number of years has really taken the leadership role in relating to and connecting with and understanding and appreciating the value of the Christian community that stands for Israel. Most of us are not familiar with this world. Most of us are not involved in this world. I have learned about it over the last number of months from my conversations with Rabbi Mischel, and I've been educated to understand and appreciate the extraordinary value of these relationships, and that's why I'm here tonight. Reverend Moon, it is a privilege to sit next to you. Your reputation precedes you as a stellar human being, as an extraordinary leader of your community, and as an outstanding friend and supporter of the Jewish people. People say all kinds of things, but you show up. You're there, on the ground. You were here in Bnai Yeshurun not long ago. You've been in Teaneck before, protesting. You brought thousands of Christians to Columbia University. We need friends. We appreciate friends. You are our friend, and we cannot thank you enough and express our gratitude. I think that part of the reason why so many people have come to hear the two of you this evening is out of a sense of curiosity. Who is this person? Why is Rabbi Mischel so involved? Why is it important to engage in the Christian community that is supportive of Israel? We need to understand that we can't just speak of Christians and think everybody's the same, just like we can't speak of Jews and think that everybody or every group or every grouping is the same. So people want to know what this is and who you are. But I think, as Rabbi Schreier mentioned, the curiosity is also driven to some extent by suspicion. Wow, I mean, this, I don't know, my whole life I'm hearing that Christians don't like Jews. Christians for hundreds of years wanted to kill Jews. Christians wanted to convert Jews, and sometimes it was an either-or proposition. Either you convert or I'm going to kill you. Or Christians want Jews to go to Israel because at some time they're all going to be blown up, and then the second coming, and it's going to be really convenient to have all the Jews in one place. So the curiosity is driven, I think, to some extent, by a discomfort. And I would like to ask you to begin by explaining to us who you are, where you're coming from, and what's different, and why is it different, and why are you different? And I ask you this out of the deepest reverence and respect that I have for you. Reverend Moon.
Well, thank you, and thank you all for coming. I've been super excited about this evening for weeks. Ellie and I have been like plotting this grand tour. We want to take this across America, like the Who, perhaps. And it will be the Saturday People, Sunday People tour. And we will go to synagogues and churches and tell everybody.
Am I coming too? Or
Yeah, come on. Come on. You only have to learn the drum. But listen. There is a long history of Christian anti-Semitism, and you have a right to be suspicious. I have met many people over the years who have told me, I asked them, why do you keep kosher, but you don't do Shabbat or something? Well, and they tell me, I have a friend who told me my great-grandparents were forced to eat bacon. And so I choose, because of that, to not. And that bugs me, because it means that there was likely a Christian on the other side of that, making that act, and it makes me angry. And I don't think I knew any Jews until 2011. I grew up in Seattle. If I knew there were Jews around me, I didn't know there were Jews. I'm familiar with the last name thing. I mean, I was around a bunch of Scandinavians. It all sounds the same at some point. And so I was like, and then I actually was a missionary for 12 years. Half the time the first half was in Asia, China, and Taiwan, and Korea, etc. Second half, I started fighting human trafficking. And in the process of fighting human trafficking, I also began to be involved in reconciliation, what we call reconciliation ministry. And it was trying to bring together people who hate each other. So I lived for a bit in a house in Belfast, Northern Ireland, where you walk out the front door, you're on the Catholic side, you walk out the back door, you're on the Protestant side, and there's a 30-foot wall between them. And it was called the Peace House. And we had initiatives trying to be agents of peace between these people. And then I did it in Nigeria. I did that stuff in the Balkans. And one of the trips the last thing I did in my mission work was to trace the human trafficking routes through Europe. And I had teams of 20-year-olds who were kind of scouting ahead, going places. And one of the things I said was, let's, on the way as we're driving through Europe, let's just visit sites of atrocity and just like, I don't know, pray against them. In Genesis, the blood of Abel cries out, right? Like, so, yeah. And so it's like, there's something happens, I think, in the spirit there. And so it's, maybe go pray. And so I kept going to these places, and it was always Jews who were the victims of the atrocities at these places. And I'm like, what's up with that? And it was like, so it was 2009, I still don't know any Jews, but I'm seeing all of these, sites of dead Jews. And that bugged me also. With Poland, Auschwitz, again, no connection, but interesting. And so I ended up actually thinking, I did a lot of advocacy, and I wanted to go into policy. So, actors go to Hollywood and policy walks go to DC. So I hit the road for DC, and nobody was hiring. And in DC, because it was a terrible economic time. And I ended up at an organization called the Institute on Religion and Democracy, the intersection of faith and politics. Two things you're not supposed to talk about at dinner. That's what I did for a living. And so it was there that I actually met Jews for the first time. And I remember having these conversations going, well, that's not at all what I thought. And I would get, because I would, there was a rabbi that was really interested in, we were fighting BDS. And he's like, hey, I need you to come to this thing. I'm like, what's BDS? What kind of this? Okay, I'll come. So we'll fight together. And so I would go to things with him, and we would talk. And he would tell me about, the conservative, reformed, and orthodox, and the stuff. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And then I went to Israel first time, 2012. And I was tracking these guys going to a conference in Bethlehem, so I thought I should go too. And I thought if I'm gonna spend a week in Bethlehem, I should probably spend a week in Israel proper. And I thought, okay. So I sent an email to everybody I knew, and I said, I'm going to Israel, I want to meet your friends. I had 2 people respond, thank you. And I set up a lunch and a dinner, and I would sit, tell me your story, tell me what do you think of the conflict? How long has your family been here? Why are you here? All that stuff. And then I would say, who else should I meet? They said, oh, you should meet this person. I said, okay, can you introduce me? That would be my next coffee, lunch, dinner. I just drove up and down the country, meeting people. Tell me your story. And then I did the same thing on the Palestinian side. And it was a very different stories. Total asymmetry. But I remember sitting with a Palestinian peace activist, and I said, what do you want? And he says, well, I want peace. I said, well, so does Miss America. That's not an answer. Everybody wants peace, right? Paint me the picture of peace. What does peace look like? And this picture of peace didn't have any Jews in it. And I was, well, that's not peace. The cessation of violence because the people you hate don't exist anymore, that's not peace. I was like, I can't advocate for that. Literally, I could have gone either way. I didn't have a side. But that experience was like, I can't, there was a desire for peace on the side of the Jews. And there's a desire for no Jews on the side of the Palestinians. And I thought, that's a different equation. And I began talking about it. And I wrote some articles. And those got read. And then I started seeing that the Christian institutions of America were largely anti-Israel. And I thought, well, that's bad. And I knew a lot of those leaders. And so I started calling them out. And, it just one thing led to another. And the next thing I know, I'm doing it full time. That was 10 years ago. And then a couple years ago, I met Tuli Weiss and Ellie, and we just hit it off. And, you know, we just thought we should do this for real. Yeah, because I think it's important that we have these conversations. I think the elephant in the room is, like you said, do you want to convert us? And do you want us all to go to the Holy Land so you die in the apocalypse? I don't on either of those things. Okay, so that's good.
You passed.
I know. Woo. I mean, there are Christians that do want that. You know, there is a verse in the New Testament, go into all the world, preach the gospel, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That's what it says. So it's a bit of a mitzvot for us. But at the same time, there is this long history that I'm looking at of just like hatred and expectation for the Jews to be like everybody else. And both the Bible and history tells me that the Jews are not like everybody else. And I think that to me, that's a revelation of that the Jews are special in a special way, and that they're special to God in a special way. And if they're special to God in a certain way, then I don't need to be mucking around in that. I just want to, you know, as Zachariah says, I'm going to grab a hold of a couple of threads and just come along with that guy, because that looks like fun. And there are, like I said, there are Christians that want to evangelize Jews, but I'm not one of them, and there's a lot of me. And I would also say that most Christians are terrified of evangelism anyway, since they're never going to ask you. And if you have a Christian come and say, you know, like, I think they're surprised. First of all, most Christians are like me, don't know any Jews. They really don't. I don't think that there's this like deep well of, there's tons of Jews out there in middle America, and they're just like looking for Christian friends. That's not, and if they do often meet Jews, they're liberal and they're gonna fight over politics really fast. I mean, I was in Atlanta a few years ago and sitting with a Reform rabbi, and he was upset that the local city council had passed a resolution against antisemitism. He didn't like it. I don't know why, but he didn't like it. And he kept saying, I was sitting literally in a group, there's 4 or 5 of us there. It's like, those white Christian men, those white Christian men. And I was like, hello, white Christian man right here. And I thought, because the rut of anti-Semitism is so deep and can be fallen into so easily, I can imagine that those white Christian men who thought they were doing something right by the Jewish community, and then to have somebody representing the Jews just give them a hard time. I can imagine that there's a small step from being frustrated by a political argument to going, them Jews. And to me, that fall into anti-Semitism is very fast, very easy, and I'm doing everything I can to stop that from happening.
Well, we are extremely, extremely grateful to you and appreciate your understanding that there is room in this world for different perspectives and different religions, even though there are fundamental differences and disagreements, but there are a lot more that we have in common in terms of humanity and moral decency and ethical probity and trying to make the world a better place. And you're up there for us. And I want to come back. You said a couple of things, but I want to move to Rabbi Mischel. Rabbi Mischel, you have had an illustrious career within the Orthodox community. I mentioned Staten Island, the rabbi in Livingston for a number of years, and I know how impactful that rabbinate was. We've had a number of conversations over the years regarding various issues that came up within your congregation that you acquitted yourself incredibly appropriately and admirably with great leadership. And then you went to Israel, and now you are involved in Mizrahi magazine, and we are grateful to you for that. It seems to me that most of your time, or a lot of your time, is spent immersed in the world of Christians, Christianity, Christian supporters of Israel. How did you get involved in that? And are there any red lines for you? Are there positions and Christians, even if they may say the right thing, or somewhat say the right thing, just not appropriate for you, you feel that you want to be engaged with them? How do you navigate this curiosity / suspicion from where you sit?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. First of all, to Rabbi Schacter and to Rabbi Schreier. You know, not every rabbi would host this gathering in their shul, and not every rabbi would lead this conversation. And the fact that you do, and you're willing to do so, I think speaks to your leadership. We live in a new world after October 7th, and we can't keep our heads down and do the same thing that we've done always. And I appreciate the two of you for leading, and also for being my Rebbe and for giving me guidance and keeping me on the straight and narrow. So thank you very much. How did I get involved in this? So the truth is, it started when I was a kid already, very, very long time ago. My father and mother, they were new Balei Tshuva, and my father was working as a young man right out of graduate school on Wall Street. And there was plenty of anti-Semitism back then. There probably is now again, so I guess everything goes in a circle. And he really bonded with a man named Emery Dawson. Now, Emery also didn't fit in because my father was the Orthodox Jew and Emery was the black man. And there's plenty of racism in the 70s in Wall Street. So they hit it off. The two of them became good friends, but then they realized that they actually had a lot more in common than just being the odd man out. My father is a religious Jew, an Orthodox Jew, and Emery was a very committed, serious Christian. And they became very good friends, and every year on Sukkot, they would come on Shabbos Chol HaMoed.
You want to explain what that is?
The Feast of Tabernacles.
You're in it.
Okay.
10 years.
Okay.
Luke's an insider now, he knows.
Yeah. Okay. If anything...
I can start singing if you're not careful.
So every year on Sukkot, they would come and sit in our sukkah, and we became good friends. And I remember when I was in YU, Emery's church, which is a Black Baptist church in New Jersey, they wanted to see a synagogue. And so Rabbi Newberger gave me permission at Beth Abraham. I don't know if any of the Beth Abraham people knew this, but it was Sunday, like 10:30 in the morning. They came after church, and I had 50 Baptists in Beth Abraham for about 3 hours, just talking to them, explaining everything that was going on. I was 20 years old, and it was amazing. They were so polite, so much easier than the Jews. I mean, it was unbelievable. So
Quiet and chill.
they were quiet. They listened. It was wonderful. So I've always had a great desire to be involved in this, and I did it a little bit as a rabbi in Livingston. But once I came to Israel, a whole new world of possibilities opened up, and I zoomed right for it. So really, really fascinated by this work. There's a big, great world out there, everyone. I mean, I love working and being the editor of HaMizrahi. I worked at YU, and it's beautiful, but there's a much, much bigger world out there, and I'm learning new, unbelievable things all the time. I mean, it's just incredible. I think I'll give you one story just because it'll give you a sense of what it's like out there. This was a few days after October 7th. My wife Rebecca was here. I have to give her props because we were still sitting in the bomb shelter with the kids, and some of them having anxiety attacks. And she let me leave and fly to America to go to major Christian events to try to gather support for Israel. This was literally a few days after October 7th. And I went to Orlando to Paula White, Trump's pastor. She had a whole conference, and I spoke there. It was like an unbelievable experience. But I remember, I'll never forget this. I landed in DFW on Friday morning at the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. It's one of the biggest airports in the world. It's bigger than Manhattan. And I'm there, 8:30 in the morning, waiting for my ride to pick me up, and I had to daven shacharis. And I couldn't daven. I don't know if anyone could daven after October 7th. So I figured, if I can't have kavana, let me at least put my talis and tefillin on and march around like a crazy Jew around DFW, which is what I did. I'm a lady, that's what we do. So I'm marching around, and my head's in different places, but I felt like, let thousands of people see a Jew who's proud. But it comes to Shemona Esrei, you can't walk around when you come to the Shemona Esrei. It's for the Christians in the room, it's the high point of our prayer. So I stepped off to the side, I put my feet together, and I'm davening Shemona Esrei. And you know when you can sense that somebody's really close to you, even with your eyes closed, you can sense somebody's really uncomfortably close. And I opened up my eyes in the middle of Shemona Esrei, and I saw a husband and wife, like this close to my face, staring at me. It's the middle of Shemona Esrei, you can't talk, so I wasn't really sure what to do. So I kept davening, however weird it was. And then it got weirder, right? The woman threw her arms around me, hugged me tight, buried her face in my shoulder, and then said over and over and over again, crying, weeping into my shoulder, in the name of Jesus, right? And may God bless the apple of his eye, right? And then again, over and over and over again, in the name of, may God protect his beloved children. She's weeping and crying over me and holding on to me, and I'm thinking, why is my wife not here to see this? This is unbelievable. And then I thought, maybe it's good my wife is not here to see this. But then I thought, I really better finish Shemona Esrei quickly because this is getting stranger and stranger. But the last thought I had before I finished Shemona Esrei is that we're both praying at the same time, because she had started to pray on my shoulder. And her husband was watching like this was normal. It was unbelievable. And I realized we were both davening, however strange it was. There are people who were breaking down in tears at DFW airport because the Jewish people were hurting. And that was an eye-opening moment for me. And this was something I was already doing for a few years. And yet, even just to see this after October 7th, it convinced me that there's something here, right? There's something very, very deep and very, very profound. Now, Rabbi Schacter, you asked me an all-important question, right? What are the red lines? And everyone, there are red lines. And Rabbi Schacter mentioned earlier that, just like not all Jews are the same, not all Christians are the same. We tend to be very sophisticated when we look at our own group, but then when we look at others, they're all the same, right? Right? Like how many Jews tell you confidently, those Christians, right? All they want is for us to die in the apocalypse. And I'm thinking to myself, how many of the apostles can you name? And you're already an expert on Christianity. What do you know? There's 2.2 billion Christians in the world. First, educate a little bit. We don't have to become scholars of Christian theology, but to understand a little bit about this world. It's amazing, our schools, we were all taught as kids, if you went to Jewish day school, we learned in depth about the Inquisition, what a show, right? The Inquisition, we learned about the Crusades, right? Rabbi Schacter is actually an expert on this, right? We learned all of that, but do we know anything about the Christians today that we live among? I think there's something missing in our education. And I've learned over the years that you can't just say the Christians, just like it's insulting to us if they would say the Jews, as if we're all the same, right? As if I'm the same as a Reformed rabbi or a secular Jew who doesn't believe in God who's on TV, right? We're not all the same. And so we have to, to make those distinctions. Now, what is the key distinction? My personal approach, and this is based on poskim, at Israel 365, our posek is Rabbi Yehoshua Pfeffer, who's a dayan on Rav Asher Weiss is based in. And he's an incredible supporter of what we do, and he's somebody that we talk to all the time, because this is complex. And as Orthodox Jews, Torah-believing Jews, we have to be asking questions about this all the time. And I ask him, I think, some of his most interesting shilas. I'll tell you that. Some really, really interesting ones. And if he has a future book on this topic, he can thank me in the acknowledgments. I ask him very, very strange things. But what is the red line? The way I understand it is, look, we all understand that there are major disagreements, major theological disagreements. On the other hand, there's, as Dennis Prager says all the time, there's only one example of two religions sharing one holy book in the history of humanity, and that's Jews and Christians. And that book is the Teaneck. Right? There's a unique relationship here, even though it's a messy and complicated one, but there's a unique relationship here. And when we think about these these people who profess love, but are they really our friends, or are they not? I think it comes down to one thing. Of course we disagree about a lot of things, but what do you do? Right? I believe in the end of time, right? As I believe most of the people in this room will agree with me, that Christians will acknowledge they made certain mistakes, even if they were right on a lot of things. And the Christians in this room believe pretty much the same thing, right? That there are certain things that we Jews will open our eyes to at the end of days. Now, are we going to be insulted that they believe that? Well, if we're insulted about that, then shouldn't they be insulted by what we believe? What do you think we're saying in Aleinu L'Shabeach every day? Right? We're saying in Aleinu L'Shabeach, certain things will change. Now, so I'm not insulted by different religious views. That's okay, and that by definition means if I really believe what I believe, then I believe that the other person is going to be wrong about some things, and that's okay. What I'm concerned about is action. Right? A Christian whose goal is to proselytize the Jewish people, meaning their goal is to convert Jews to Christianity, right? That is the red line. That is the red line. Right? If after 1900 years of Christians abusing us, right? If after all of that, right, and us being and putting us through hell that we went through all these years, now you want to come and change me? That's not friendship. Right? Friendship is not saying I'll be your friend if you believe what I believe. That's not friendship, right? And that to me is the absolute red line. Right? Now, so we will not work at Israel 365 with any Christian organization that engages in proselytizing of Jews. Now, I'm not worried about Orthodox Jews. When was the last time you heard of an Orthodox Jew who became a Christian? Basically never. It never happens. On the other hand, there are many Christians who are involved in missionizing, secular Russian Jews in Tel Aviv. Right? And they think they're doing the most wonderful thing. In a certain way, they are, right? They're finding drug addicts, and then they're teaching them about God, right? And then they teach them about Christianity, and they're dedicating their lives to this, and they give money to this. But in the end of the day, if you are coming after our people to change us, and not just us, but I mean any Jew in the world, right? Specifically targeting Jews as Jews, that is the red line. Short of that, if you pray for me because you want me to one day believe what you believe, well, we do the same thing, so that doesn't bother me. If you can acknowledge that we can be different, right, and when it comes to the Jewish people, it's hands off because of our unique relationship over these last 1900 years, then we can work together. Now, privately, one-on-one, I will speak to pastors who work on converting Jews to try to get them to change their mind. I do that all the time and explain to them just how deeply insulting it is and how angry it makes me. I tell them straight up. There's a church, one of the very biggest churches in America. I'm going to say the name because they should be called out. Gateway Church. It's one of the biggest churches in America, and they love Israel, but they also want to convert us all. And so I've met some of their pastors, and they wanted to talk to me more. I said, we can't work with you, but I can have a conversation. And I tell them that your chief pastor, who's dedicating his life to missionizing Jews, he thinks he's helping us. I hate him, and he's my enemy. And they were shocked. They think that they're doing such a good thing. They're sharing salvation with us. They want to help us. I said, you need to understand that if the people you're trying to help despise you, then you're doing something wrong. That's the red line. But short of that, if they can accept that their job is to be wonderful Christians and to care for the Jewish people as friends, even if they disagree with us, right? And we can feel the same way with them, let's work together. Because in the end of the day, we are in a war, and it's a world war. The war is here. It's here at the doors of Bnai Yeshurun. It's a war for America's soul, right? Over 50% of young Americans believe that Israel shouldn't exist. You remember that poll? I think about that poll every single day. And if we're going to change that, we need to work together with true friends like Luke.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rabbi Mischel. Thank you for the passion. And thank you for your perspective. And thank you for your position. I would like to ask both of you, each one of you individually from your own perspectives, to help this extraordinarily thoughtful audience who came to hear you tonight, help them understand why it's important for them to be involved in this effort. What can they do to move this effort forward? Living in Teaneck or somewhere else in New Jersey or wherever this audience comes from, where we live our lives, we're in a bubble, we do what we do, and we're trying to make a living and raise a family and keep our nose clean and pray for Israel and travel to Israel. And where do we find the space, and how do we find the space to engage in the Christian community that you, Reverend Moon, represent in a way that's practical, meaningful, and hopefully long-lasting? Why don't we start with you, and then Rabbi Mischel will go to you.
Well, that's an excellent question. I mean, I think it is a challenge that the Orthodox community is, have a very strong rhythm of life. And I actually think that is the thing that attracts me the most. Because what you have in that is, I think a lot of Christians, like I said, don't know any Jews. They have read their Bible. They read it through, I've read my Bible through dozens of times. I can quote large passages of Scripture. And yet, when I was looking at before I knew any Jews, I looked at the passages through a very particular way. One way, every time. Always that way. And then I meet a Jewish person and they go, well, did you see that one other side? And I didn't. And I'm like, whoa, it's like mind-blowing to me. And it's amazing. It's like you have gems and they're all over the place. And there's people out there that would love to look at those gems too. But they don't know. They don't know how. They don't know what to do, how to go about that. And so I think there's a challenge of getting the two communities together. I was asked several times, like, well, let's just organize a big rally and get everybody together. It's hard because, again, two separate communities. But y'all do Shabbat every Friday. Invite a Christian over there. Blow your mind. It's amazing. I think it's amazing.
Why is it amazing?
Why is it amazing? My favorite parts, right? I can sing Shalom Aleichem. I'm really good at it. Okay? I can do and then the singing of Proverbs 31 over the women of the household. And then I've watched so many times full grown men burst into tears as they watch the father of the household pray the blessings over his children that the patriarchs prayed over theirs. And what that does is that for a lot of people it's like, oh, ancient Israel is not modern Israel. But when you go to a Shabbat table, ancient and modern Israel smash together. And it takes away one of the strongest tools that the anti-Semite has. And to me, it's beautiful. There's nothing like it. So I do tours to Israel. I've got 36 times to Israel at this point and taken hundreds of people. We always end at a Shabbat table because there's nothing like it. And I always get the feedback because it's amazing. So there's that kind of very practical, easy thing, right? But it's hard. It's not easy. Honestly, I don't have a good solution. I'm just gonna keep trying to introduce Jews and Christians together as best as I can. I don't know. I just one thing at a time. It's what I've been doing for a while, so I just keep doing that.
You keep doing it, and we're going to be so thrilled and happy and grateful. Thank you. Rabbi Mischel.
So I think there are two very important but distinct reasons why this relationship matters and why we as Jews, talking to the Jews in the room, why we have to get involved and get to know Christians and be involved in this work. So the first reason is a very practical one. We talked about this before. We don't have friends. We just don't have that many friends out there in the world. And this is all prophesied. I know we don't read these books, like it's so passé. Who reads Navi? Who reads all these things, right? Especially those later ones. But if you read there, I mean, it talks about this is what's going to happen. We don't have friends, and we have to do our hishtadlos. We have to. Right? We can't say that we're supporting Israel and then ignore this relationship. And I'll point out something here that I don't mean to insult anyone, I speak to myself specifically. I think that for so many of us, we don't realize what our true obligation is as Jews. We are all obligated to fight in this war. We are living right now in a milchemes mitzvah of the highest order. This is an obligatory war for our very existence. I live every day with shame that I did not serve in the IDF. I believe personally that every Jew, whether you're Haredi or religious Zionist or a modern Orthodox kid in Teaneck, has an obligation to serve in the IDF. And I live every day with embarrassment and shame that I did not serve. I didn't understand it. I thought when I was 19 that if I did it, it would be really cool and everybody would say he's such a great guy and the girls would love it. That's what I thought, but I didn't realize when I was 19 that I actually had an obligation to do so. And so now that I'm too old and I have bad knees, right, I feel though every single day as a Jew, not as a rabbi, forget rabbis, right? As a Jew, I have an obligation to fight in this war and I have to do whatever is in my hands to do. And so all of us have that obligation. There are not that many Jews out there that really are connected to Judaism, understand what it means to be a Jew. This is not a time where anyone can sit on the sidelines. We have to ask ourselves that question every day, and it's uncomfortable every day. We should ask ourselves, what have I done? My people are at war, right? I watched on October 7th, I stood on my porch, right, as the loser American who didn't serve in the army, and I looked out and I saw, because we're on the side of a mountain, I saw all these families hugging their sons goodbye as they got into cars on that Shabbos to drive off, to go to the army, and some of them didn't come back. What are we doing? Right? What are we doing? This is something that we can do, right? And that we must and absolutely must do. And so every Jew, we have no idea how knowledgeable we are. We have no idea. You may not think of yourself as a great Torah scholar, but if you've been blessed with any sort of Jewish education, you come to shul every week, the amount of Torah that we know, the amount of Tanakh that we know, the Chumash that we know, what we can share. And why am I talking about Chumash if I'm talking about a war? The answer is, and I've seen this with my eyes, when Jews teach Torah to non-Jews, to Christians, those Christians end up loving the Jewish people on a very practical level. If that's all you care about, is even just us, I believe it's a national security obligation, a national security issue to teach Tanakh to Christians. Because every time I've done that, the Christians that I study with have become closer to the Jewish people. Many of them have become activists, and they are worth their weight in gold. In terms of what they are doing for us, it is unbelievable. That's number one. The second reason we need to be involved is because this is what God put us in the world to do. It's not about October 7th. This is about the Jewish mission in this world. I know we don't read those later books of Tanakh, they're hard, but what Luke calls Isaiah, what we call Yeshayahu, if you read that book and you read about what it means to be a light unto the nations, the end goal, everyone, is a rebuilt third temple, third Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, where we are going to be outnumbered 1,000 to 1 by non-Jews in the Beis HaMikdash. If that makes you feel uncomfortable, then maybe just don't read Yeshayahu. Because that's what it's going to look like. They're all going to be coming and bringing korbanos and davening shoulder to shoulder with us in Yerushalayim. That is the end goal. Now, how does that happen? Is that one day there's going to be a light, and the light's going to be a great light from above, right? And all of a sudden, all of the nations of the earth will look up and say, wait a second, those Jews aren't so bad. Wait a second, they're God's people. Is that how it's going to happen? I don't think so. Right, we've been told, right, we've been taught, it's in the Gemara, in the Yerushalmi, that the redemption will come ray of light by ray of light, kimma kimma, step by step by step. Now that we know that's true when it comes to settling the land of Israel, it's been 150 years of settling the land. I mean, it's unbelievable how redemption is happening slowly, step by step. It's so slow that you can miss it. But do we think that's the only part of redemption that happens slowly? This whole relationship with the rest of the peoples of the world, where the billions of people in the world know Hashem and know that we are God's chosen people and our particular role in helping the world come to that knowledge, is that all going to happen like that? That's not the religious Zionist way of thinking of things. It's going to happen step by step by step by what we're doing right now. Everybody, we are living through miraculous times. There are now millions and millions of Christians in the world, not a majority, but millions, who believe that the Jewish people are God's chosen people and that they turn to us with a thirst, as Luke was talking about. They want to learn Torah with us. They want to learn from us. There are hundreds of thousands of Noahides, let alone Christians, out there. It's a miraculous change that happened with the state of Israel. And we have an obligation to meet that need. Luke mentioned a verse before, a pasuk before in Zechariah, where it talks about I think it's chapter 8, right, of Zechariah, where it talks about how there are going to be 10 non-Jews grabbing onto the shirt of every Jew saying, teach me Torah. When it says, Ki mitzion teitzei Torah, udvar Hashem Yerushalayim, that from Zion will come forth Torah. We sing that every year on Simchas Torah. We were singing that on October 7th when the rockets came. What does that mean? That's talking about the Torah will come from Jerusalem to the nations of the world. That's not talking about the Jews. It's because it's going to come from the Jews in Israel to the rest of the world, to the nations. That's the goal, everyone. And I know it's hard to think about that goal when it seems like everybody wants to kill us. But ultimately, that's not really the case. 70 to 80% of Americans still support us. We need them to wake up and to stand up and stop watching Netflix and take over the streets, right? And push the idiots who are in the streets and send them back to their holes so they never come out again, right? That's what we need them to do. But we shouldn't forget that there are people out there that are looking to us for inspiration. Everybody, America is falling apart before our eyes. America is falling apart. And we need to be the light into the nations. Israel is the model. Look at the young people in America, not all young people, but we know it's a disaster. The selfish generation. Look at the young people in Israel. What do we do? Our young people are the greatest generation. It's unbelievable, right? I stand up when 18, 20-year-olds come into the room. I stand up for them. We all should. They're putting their lives on the line and they're doing it happily. It's unbelievable what we have figured out, what we have in the land of Israel today. We have an obligation. The world is lost. Europe is probably lost, right? I mean, the jihadists are taking over Britain. It's crazy. We have an obligation as Jews to shine light into the world. That's the deeper, longer-term obligation and the reason why we need to be involved in this. And I will say as the last point, because I'm going on, I've been to so many Christian audiences and spoken with so many people, and there's always that one question they want to ask, but they're too embarrassed to ask. And then I say, we're friends, you can ask it, because I know what you're going to ask anyway. Rabbi, why do all the Jews seem to hate us? Like, I see all the Jews they know are these, anti-God, secular Jews on TV that seem to hate, white Christian males. So I have to explain to them that, sadly, the whole story of Jewish assimilation, they don't know that. They don't know Jews like us. We have an obligation to show the world that Jews are people who believe in God, people who believe in the Bible, and more than that, we are God's people. And if they meet people like us, we can make an unbelievable difference. An unbelievable difference. For Am Yisrael in a practical way, and to the second point, in bringing the redemption.
Wow. We'd like to wrap up, and I would like to do so by inviting our two extraordinarily illustrious guests to share some final words of completion for tonight's discussion. I'll start with you.
Thank you. The first time I came to Teaneck was actually in 2001. There was an anti-Israel rally in the town, 21, yeah, in the town square, in which I was asked to come and observe as a journalist. Instead, I came as an activist. I bought a sign and I wrote on it, "I stand with Israel and Jews." And I stood on one side of the fence, and there was 250 Palestinian activists on the other side, and on my side was me, alone, for like 45 minutes. And after that, I went back to my staff and I said, I need to do this differently. I need to get more people to come with me because that's terrible. And so we started a thing called the Philos Action League at the time, which is basically to just get Christians to sign up. Anytime there was an anti-Semitic incident anywhere in the country, a Christian would show up in that location with a bouquet of white roses and a card saying, "We stand in friendship and solidarity." That's it. We showed up over 500 times since we started that around the country. And actually today, we rebranded and are relaunching that organization, and it's called Generation Zion, because we believe that we are building, we are Generation Zion. We are the generation that will go up to the mountain of the Lord and learn from the God of Jacob. That's what I believe. So, Hannah has a bouquet of white roses. She's going to hold them up for me because I asked her to bring them for us. These are for you all. at this synagogue. And so the White Rose for us, there was a group of college students in the 40s called the White Rose. They were Germans that opposed Nazis and stood with the Jews. So we hearken to their memory with us. And so thank you for having me. It has been an honor. I love you all. Thank you.
I just want to finish, first of all, by thanking everyone for being here. It means that you care and that you're ready to act. And I'm going to finish with a challenge. We are launching right now, as a surprise, the Israel 365 New Jersey, which is a branch of Israel 365, which we're setting these up around the country. I'm leaving on Sunday for many weeks to go around the country to set these up. It'll be led by Dr. Moshe Glick and Renee Glick of West Orange, if you know them. Really amazing activists, and who are doing unbelievable work for Israel. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to continue all the work that we're doing for Israel now, but instead of having 400 people at a rally, if we work together with our Christian friends, we'll have 4,000, maybe 14,000 or 400,000 one day, right? It will amplify all that we do. When we work together, it'll be that much stronger. So I urge everyone, check out Israel365.com. You go, you see the branches, sign up for Israel 365 New Jersey, be in touch with me, be in touch with Dr. Glick. We need people to be involved, right? Most people will not be involved. Most people come to a talk and it's wonderful that you're here and then go back home. But if you have any time, any capacity, please get involved. Help the Glicks and we'll work together. Luke is in Westchester, not far. Lots of friends of New Jersey. And all of a sudden, our efforts will be amplified and we can do that much more for Am Yisrael. Thank you, everyone.
I'm just going to
I would like to suggest that people in this room, following up on what Rabbi Mischel just said, and I'm thinking about this myself, should sign up once every 2 weeks or once a month to get on Zoom and to teach Tanakh to Christians. I think that Rabbi Mischel will find them. For us, this is not heavy lifting. These are not Christians who are going to challenge us or who will give us a difficult time, but they're thirsty. My mind and my heart has been opened by my exposure to Rabbi Mischel and now to my BFF, my sweet friend, Reverend Moon. There are a lot of millions of Christians who are looking for wisdom. And we know the Old Testament, we know Tanakh. And it's a matter of spending an hour and talking to 20 people on Zoom. So that's a practical thing that I would like to suggest, and I'm thinking about it myself. I want to conclude by thanking Rabbi Mischel so much for putting this together, for the work that you do. And Reverend Moon, you are unbelievable, you are extraordinary. You are a mensch. You are someone with deep moral values and incredible integrity. You are a pious Christian, and you live your Christian life in a way that brings light to your religion, to your community, and to the world. And we are the beneficiaries, and we thank you so, so much.